do, everybody? Welcome to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I'm Ray, your audiobook reviewer, and I will be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you. Today, I'm going to begin with First Login, Chronicle, Book 1, by Kevin Murphy, narrated by Nick Padell, with a book length of 11 hours and 47 minutes.
Sitting in the center of a great stone hall, lit aglow by an abundance of torches, an old man leans back, worn and decrepit, on an upraised throne. He's draped in elegant robes of aged purple cloth, finely embroidered with an odd but matching pointed cap. Cobwebs cling to him where he sits, unperturbed, and camouflage his thin white hair and beard. His sedentary posture suggests that he has not moved in a very long time. He seems more dead than alive. The old man stirs and wheezes, producing dry sounds not far from the rattles of death. After a moment, the harsh rasping of parched, unused vocal cords settles into a hoarse voice. "What if?" While the old one slowly speaks, he centers himself in his seat and pulls himself up to stand through great effort.
Well. It seems that first time Kevin Murphy has crafted a pretty cool series starter. I enjoyed every minute of this book, and I have to say that I think it is because the main character acts a lot like I would in the same situations. I mean, he gets himself into some trouble, but he also gets himself out of it. And a lot of the stuff he does is what I call sneaky, underhanded kind of things, and that's just about the kind of stuff I would pull if I was a player. The book doesn't have an overarching goal, and the MC sort of meanders around, but I wouldn't call it a slice-of-life book because I hate slice-of-life books. Hate them. But it's probably going to be considered a slice-of-life book because too much happens, and there was an undercurrent of mystery that gets slightly revealed at the end of the book, but there's so much that happens, and nothing kind of goes in any expected way. The MC, Dacon, loses his job and ends up playing the game for real-life credits. And you know, if you've listened to this podcast at any point, you know I hate that trope. I hate making money in the game in the real world. I just cannot stand it. It does not work for me, but I will let it slide because it is such a trope now that when it happens, I just roll my eyes and roll with it. I really do. Anyway, the first day in the game kind of sucks for him, and he ends up lying to some guards just so he can get inside a city by claiming that he was mugged. Oddly, the guards show up later with his stolen gear, which just so happens to include a really cool-looking knife. Now, here is where the wandering part comes in. Dacon literally has no clue as to what he should be doing and basically just bounces from one thing to another. Even picking a class. He just kind of finds a class and is like, it doesn't sound like something I would normally do, but I don't have anything else to do right now. I can give it a shot. If I don't like it, I can change it out later. Boop, and he does. He just goes in and takes it. So, he basically bounces from one thing to another. He meets a guy, then a group, then they hunt together, and he learns that his new knife has some super killy type powers, because it's pretty good at killing things. Later efforts to discover what the knife is sort of fails, and he's left clueless, and that's one of the running undercurrent mysteries of the book throughout, is like, why is this knife so special? What is it? Whose was it? Where did it come from? So there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on. The story is pretty much Dacon either conning people to score some quick cash, and I have to say he's a pretty decent liar, or fighting higher level mobs and then leveling up with the use of his dagger. The one thing I do have to warn you about is that there is no clear and concise system here, at least not one that's revealed. The writing seems geared to keeping a lot of things about the game obscure. And I don't know if that's on purpose or if it's just a writing thing. But just don't expect to come out of this knowing all about the game, the system, or the game's storyline, if it has one. Dacon pretty much deals with everything as it comes at him. So he's not much of a planner, and he doesn't really have any information at his fingertips to draw on. So like I say, it's a crapshoot, and that's one of the things that bothered me a lot was the whole how to pick your class system really never kind of explained anything to me sufficiently. He ends up with one class, then he gets another, but he keeps his original class, and it just kind of leaves it open for more classes. And at first I thought his new class allowed him to take on multiple classes and do different things, but I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, as I listened to it as it went on, it just seems like he's got opportunities to add a class here or there and hope that they all mesh really well. And his main class, there's not anything really ever described as to what it does, what he's supposed to do, or how he's supposed to manage leveling that class. It's really weird. And I'm not saying this is a bad story. I'm just telling you, if you're looking for answers, this is not the place to go. It is not. It is not, because there is a lot of stuff that never gets resolved. And a lot of that is right there. The game system itself never really kind of comes up and says, here's what we're going to do. Now, like I say, Dakon is not much of a planner, as in he looks ahead, but he is apt at thinking on his feet and detecting an enemy's weakness. And it is his unorthodox style of play that makes him able to defeat his foes that are much higher level than he is, and then earn the cash that he so desperately needs. He allies with some interesting people, such as a lettuce salesman and a mysterious player who is far more than he seems. Dakon also manages to garner the attention of a player who wants his utterly mysterious dagger, which eventually leads to Dakon joining an organization for as a relic hunter. So basically, the book is more about what adventure is going to occur today. When Dakon gets into the game, what's going to happen? So yeah, slice of life, damn it. But it doesn't mean I have to like it as a slice of life, and I don't. I think it had a lot of action, it had a lot of story and heart to it, and it wasn't just, well, yes, it was. It was a slice of life, and it was just wandering around. But personally, I liked Dakon because he wasn't a know-it-all smartass who just cracked jokes at every turn. That's like most MCs. And he doesn't have like this little AI helper who does that. Instead, nobody around here cracks wise to such an extent that it gets to be silly or annoying. They're pretty much in the game and they play and they do what they need to do. And he really appealed to me because of his devious nature. Dakon is the guy that makes a better con man than he does a fighter. And that's for certain. And that is my kind of a character. I love people that trick other people. Tricksters are my gods. If you tell me to tell you who is your favorite person, your favorite god from mythology, well, I'm going to tell you for Norse mythology, it's going to be Loki. If you're going to talk American Indian or Native American, however you want to refer to them, it's going to be Coyote or Raven, because they're the tricksters. There's every trickster, that is my person that I love. I love to see how they play tricks. So Anisi from Africa, the spider god, these are my people. Tricksters are my people, and he is one of those. So he really appealed to me right off the bat when he started doing stuff like that. Conning the guards by telling them he got mugged. That was pretty smart, and it was a great lie. There was no way they could refute it, and it worked. And he just kept up from that moment on, pulling stunts like that, and then figuring out how to make money. He's a con man. He's a really good con man, and I think he would be a better con man than he is a fighter, and he's a hell of a fighter as long as he's got his knife. Now, Nick Podell, I'm going to come back to it. We also have later on another story by Nick Podell, so I'll be talking about him again. Does some really fine work here. And I have to say, I'm really liking his incorporation of sound effects into the reading. He does a lot of that in this book. There's chimes and tones and all sorts of things, and they not only did they fit, but they were also really pleasant on the ears. I don't know if he had found them or made them up, but I enjoyed the addition nonetheless, wherever they're from. My only complaint with Podell is that he's a one-trick pony when it comes to women's voices, and I'll repeat that later, which is why I don't swoon over his work, like on Super Sales of Superheroes Book 2. That book had a ton of women to work around, and his ladies' voices all sound very similar to one another, if not exactly the same. And here, thankfully, the female factor isn't overly high, so it's not as noticeable or as bad as it was in SSOSH, because that was nothing but women in the book. There's like one main character, the guy, Felix, and then the rest is all babes, all chicks, all dames, all broads. Yeah, I'm going to be really offensive here. But that was it. I mean, that was it. And he had to carry all those female voices, and he just doesn't do it for me in that aspect. Otherwise, he's an amazing narrator, but he just doesn't knock me out when it comes to ladies' voices. So, here I think he did a great job otherwise, and I anticipate more growth from him in the future. And I think that, like I said, the sound effects just so worked well with this story. Overall, it's a really solid first effort. I know I complained a little bit here and there, but I'm just going to just barely give this one 8 stars. There were a lot of things unrevealed, and the class setup wasn't really explained well, and it was a wandering, aimless book, to be honest with you. It's slice of life, and as much as I like the book, I just don't like slice of life. But I put up with it, and I enjoyed this book a lot. I really enjoyed the character. That is the main thing. If you have a strong character, the rest of the stuff falls in line, and, Dakon is a really powerful, strong character. So he carries the book all on his own shoulders. What can I say? So the characters outweighed a lot of the issues, and I have to say, give this a go, and go eat an Imperial salad while you do so. Give it a try and have that Imperial salad that he recommends in the book. You'll like this book. You really will. I think it's a good book, and having Nick Podell do it was a real coup for a first-timer. He was pretty smart in having that done because Podell really, really takes the reins, and I think if it was a lesser narrator, I don't think I would have enjoyed the book nearly as much. But with someone of Nick Podell's caliber, they take a mediocre book and make it great. And it was a really great book. I enjoyed it a lot. So 8 points, but just right there on the line of 8 points because there's so much unrevealed, and there were a lot of game mechanics that I just did not follow or understand. So hopefully next time around, a lot of that stuff will be a bit more fleshed out, so to speak, and we'll have a better grasp on what's going on in that world. So next up, we have Life Reset EVP, Environment versus Player, by Shammer Kuznets, narrated by the ever-amazing Jeff Hayes, Lori Catherine Winkle, and Annie Ellicott, with a book length of 21 hours and 53 solid minutes.
VI seating complete, Vic informed me unnecessarily. I could feel the power of the creature's presence for myself, causing my danger sense to tingle. Welcome to the Green Pair! The ogre had wrapped his ham-sized hand around my neck and lifted me effortlessly to his eye level.
I be the champion,
he declared with copious spraying of ogre spit. His enunciation of the words was surprisingly clear. For an ogre.
You serve the champion now. Go, find more fights for me, and bring me much food and females.
Oh, hell no. This wasn't going well at all. I thought you said he wouldn't challenge me, I projected accusingly at Vic. I said a chief or a mage would challenge you for leadership of the clan. This brute is just having a pissing contest with you. So, outpiss him or whatever you meat suits do with your piss to resolve conflicts.
So this week's sound booth spotlight, and man, this is, I'm sorry. So this is this week's sound booth spotlight, and man, was it fun. Practically 22 hours of goblin-y goodness to gnaw on. Oren, the MC who is trapped in the game world, is a goblin's dread totem who is running a goblinish style village, and he has a lot going on, if you remember the first book. Now, there's a lot of things that carry over. I know that the first book was kind of controversial because some people got a little bothered with the torture scene. And to be frank with you, I read that book. I loved it. And the torture scene was so inconsequential. When people were talking about there being a torture scene, it never even occurred to me what the heck they were talking about because it did not seem like a torture scene. To me, torture is... Oh, man, I mean, you want to talk torture, talk to me about Hostel or a Serbian film. I mean, those are torture films. just to say that bluntly. Whereas this, it was just a minor little thing that happened in the first book. None of that occurs in the second book. So if you've got that concern, just wipe it away. There's no eyeballs popping here or there. It's pretty good. But it still plays out a lot like you were playing an original World of Warcraft. Did I say that right? World of Warcraft Orcs versus Humans game. Basically, what Oren does is he creates new peons who he assigns jobs to, like go chop wood or go mine ore, whatever. Then he builds and upgrades vital facilities for the advancement of his tribe. He also fights off invaders with his limited militia, and I enjoyed this aspect more than anything, and I would never have realized how much I liked the whole world building or city building or the your fort building, whatever it is. That's why I like dungeon core so much, because they build the dungeon up. This is an aspect that I don't know what it is that appeals so much to me, and I think it's because I did play games like Orcs versus Humans and Dune, which had the same thing, only a sci-fi flavor, where you were to build up, your area and fortify it and then go out and attack others. That was like a game I played constantly. I loved it. Those sorts of things just kept me, in the gaming community as years back. And this sort of stuff it just draws me right in. So, whenever I talk about this book, or like something like Tamer, they're really going to be a pull for me just on that basis alone. I mean, if that's all it is, it's going to have me hooked. And I don't know why, but I love it. And it's just a simple thing. But the thing is, you have to realize it has to be done well. It really has to be done well. Because if you just, I'll be frank with you. The one book I just read, Conquer, which was a Dungeon Core book, it didn't feel like a Dungeon Core book, and it didn't do that. And I was really disappointed, and it really affected me as a listener, because I don't read, I listen, where I was really upset because I was sold this bill of goods, like, hey, this is a Dungeon Core book, and there was no dungeon building. There was none. This is, we're building this village. We're building it up. We're making it stronger. We're giving it something with which to work with. And I love this. So as we go through this, just bear in mind, I'm already a sucker for this sort of thing, and it's done really well. So as much as I praise the book, it's probably going to have a lot to do with that aspect of it. So anyway, I liked watching Oren level up and get new powers, but I really love to hear how he adds new buildings, okay, or upgrades. Like I say, Tamer by MSE has my attention because the characters are building a fort. The book really deals with a ton of things happening to Oren in his village after the first book has kind of settled down. It seems that no matter what Oren does, nothing is going to prepare him for the trials that are set ahead of him. Oren is in pretty deep trouble as his ex-guild members are looking for him. Now, you may remember from the first book, Oren was a guild leader who was tricked into the goblin body and expunged from his guild by another guildmate who wanted his position and power. However, Oren had a whole lot to do with the guild's success, not to mention of which, the least of which were a lot of aspects of he was the first to do this, or he had certain titles and privileges that no one else could achieve, and they wanted those. And so now they're after those. And that is like the whole setup intention for this book. So he's got a limited time to prepare for the arrival of this upcoming guild attack that he knows about. And he knows it's not going to be one, it's going to come in waves, big waves. So you also top it off, now there are new monster players that have begun showing up. There were a couple in the first book. Now there's a lot more. And it seems that one of them is the traitor. Somebody is going around ganking hapless goblin workers and stealing vital potions and supplies and even some flammable materials. So the urgency of the need to expand, gain experience, and leveling his troops is utterly palpable. You can just feel it every time that Jeff talks about this upcoming battle that's coming and how bad they've got to get things done. he does a really great job of emoting that urgency that most narrators can't convey. It comes out. It's so strong. Now, to top it off, I think one of the biggest problem Oren now has is that he struggles to retain his identity as a player, just as being a human being. Remember, he's been locked up in this game for a good long while, and he's beginning to forget that he's human. He begins to see the game world as being real, and that he is actually a goblin. You gotta remember, he's got a goblin girlfriend. He does a lot of stuff with goblins. He hasn't had a lot of contact with other players, so his viewpoint is going to skew just a hair. And that's kind of what happens here. So he's not only got this incoming wave of, old enemies, but he also has this identity crisis to face. And he is sinking more and more into the role of the Dread Totem and losing himself in the process. One of my favorite bits that got added this time around is a character, and it is the mandibled brain-eating seneschal. That made me envision a hobgoblin-y predator, that kind of a predator. He goes camouflaged. He was a really fun character, and Kuznets uses him quite effectively to demonstrate the importance and dangers of reputation in a really slick way. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about this, was something so simple gets exploited, and the way he uses it is really brilliantly. It's a great trick on the reader, the way things turn out. And kudos for him for doing that, because I don't see a lot of, twist when it comes to something that's used every single day. And I'm not a big fan, I'll be frank with you, of reputation. To me, reputation is probably my least favorite thing in games. I've said it before. I like to play, sneak people. I like to backstab, sneak attack. I like to break into homes and steal stuff. I'm a really big fan of rogues. I'm playing a warrior or I'm a rogue. And the issue I have with rogues is that even if you're not seen, you play Skyrim, boom, you do something wrong, your reputation just goes straight down the toilet, and everybody sets to attack you. And that bugs me a lot, and there's a lot of games like that. So I've never been a big fan of reputation, and here, this was a big FU to the reputation trait, which was fantastic. Another impressive thing is the way that SBT handles this book. Last go around, Jeff Hayes did the whole thing, the whole enchilada, the great big cake, all by himself. Now he's added some of the sound booth ladies into the mix, but quite wisely keeps some of the voices that he did the last time for himself. So, Oren's girlfriend, he keeps her voice. And Annie and Lori kind of bring their A game in, and the Sisters of Sound Booth supercharge the story with their sublime storytelling. They just really, they kill it. They really bring everything together with the way they do stuff. Jeff is totally the man, and I know I say that all the time, but there's reasons, total reasons. He's handling more characters than a juggling guillotine operator during the French Revolution. So, he's got a lot on his plate, but you never see him falter. You never hear him trip. Ever. I don't know how he does it, but he has impeccable pacing and knows how to wrap a chapter or add life to a battle scene. Really, really. People die and he brings it to life. It's pretty impressive. He definitely infuses a sense of urgency into everything that Oren does. I know I've said that before. And he lets his smugness, Oren's smugness, play out oh so very well, that you literally cringe when Oren says something so snide that whatever it is he just said is going to come back to bite him on the rump. Totally. One thing that sort of surprised me was that Jeff didn't figure out a way to add FX to the shadow magic. I would have loved to have heard like a light wind or a full breeze blowing when Oren used his shadow powers, but that's really just my own personal desires. And SBT has been really nailing a lot of the stuff that they've been doing lately with sound, especially if you listen to the new VGO side quest stuff. They really go all out for that, and believe me, it is going to just blow you away when you hear it. So SBT just nailed this book down and provided some high-quality narration. My final score for the book is 8.3 stars. I like that Kuznets doesn't spit out shorter books, and that he knows the proper thing to do is to put his MC through the ringer as often as possible and have no mercy. no torture scenes this time. I like that sort of stuff, but that bothered a lot of people, so we'll be happy that we skipped that. The narration is on a nuclear level, and the overall story is fun, fast-paced. It just rides a level, that you just don't see very often. There's a struggle to become stronger and preparing for a point when the PCs will invade the village. All of that just kind of comes together at this crescendo, this huge wave of crushing, overwhelming hopelessness, because there's points where you say, I think they're screwed now. And this is really slick and smooth, and it will sucker you in for more hours than you realize. Believe me, once you start, you won't want to put it down, you won't want to stop, so go out and get this book and enjoy it. So the next book I'm going to be reviewing has this really weird title, but it was a totally fun book. A little weird, but really fun. Now I'm going to be examining Opening Moves, which is part of the GAM 3 series. I have no idea why it's called the GAM 3 series, but I will say...
Dad, it's the game! The 3 is an eel, man! I have told you this multiple times!
Look, I've told you, you're the prop guy. If you don't have a prop in your hand, I do not want to see you around here.
I'll show you a prop!
Oh! Okay. Good prop use. That's better. Thanks. So yeah, Opening Moves, the game, book 1 by Cosmo Yap. I don't think that's his real name either. But you're not going to tell me that, are you? Oh, prop guy. Hey, welcome back, prop guy. It was good to see you again. He's been gone for far too long. Anyway, the book is by Cosmo Yap, which I believe is a pseudonym. It is narrated by Nick Padell and has a length of 12 hours and 26 minutes.
A ray of light broke Alan's reverie, a dream he couldn't recall being real. He had been in a serene white room, or so he thought, but was now lying in a field of yellow, dried-out grass. Looking around, he briefly panicked, but then remembered he was in the game. It was amazing how lifelike everything was. The touch, the sight, the smell, everything seemed so real to him. In fact, it somehow felt more real, which didn't make any sense. Everything around Alan was crystal clear. He had always had a bad sense of smell, and his vision wasn't perfect. Now, though, he could see the tiny drop of water on an individual blade of grass nearly 20 feet away. He also smelled everything, from faint dewy grass to animal scat to lemon trees. Trying to get a grasp on where he was, Alan looked for noticeable landmarks. He was on top of a small hill in some rural part of what he assumed to be California.
So, while I liked Opening Moves, there were some things that bothered me just a little. Now, first, though, it was more of like, I'm going to give you the setup than anything else, but there were some issues. One promising feature this is a strictly sci-fi story, and we really don't get enough of those in LitRPG today. Now, I'm not complaining the fantasy stuff is there, but it's a huge portion of LitRPG. LitRPG has like this heavy fantasy element 99% of the time when you open a book and start listening to it or reading it, and that's funny because sci-fi seems to almost be the purview of our Russian comrades. Now, of course, I think it's a little odd to say that a genre that features game entry via computers, has AI elements and game mechanics, is more fantasy-based. But you get my point, right? Anyway, you'll get that reference that I just said anyway once you listen to the book, because it said a lot. That's another little nitpicky thing. But it said a lot. Anyway, the game is something about how aliens conduct their warfare. What happens is Earth is discovered by aliens. The aliens have a way to do battles without wiping everybody out. They do it through a VR game, so to speak. And humans have been given a few years to kind of get their game legs. I think they have like 3 years left now. And in that capacity, they are trying to play catch up with aliens who played the game for thousands of years. Now, the MC, Alan, sort of buys his way into the game by having some money fronted for him. Alan, the MC, he becomes a machine lord and has an AI that he basically uses as a cheat throughout the entire book. Now, this was my biggest problem. I'll be frank with you. Alan is not a very deep character. I would almost say that he belongs in Flatland because he is a tad one-dimensional. You know, Flatland? Yeah, that's where he goes. There's no character development at all or growth. He ends pretty much the same way he starts. So, yay for consistency. He also comes in with an AI that pretty much helps him route or solve everything that he encounters, which that's... It kind of took away a little bit of the seeing Alan struggle and overcome things as things went. I would have liked to see him actually using his own Noogle? I was going to say noggin or noodle, and I put Noogle. So that's my new phrase for the day. My Noogle. I'm using my Noogle. Anyway, the book is really action heavy, very action heavy, and it's very fun. So I can easily forgo character development in favor of some good old butt kicking. Now the story does draw you in, and I was pretty much kept on the edge of my seat because it did not slow down as the game progressed. It kept me engaged. I rode this story like a broken mechanical bull. And the reason why I say that is because I couldn't ride a working one. I'd break my neck. So a broken one I would be really good with. And that's just how this story went. It just took me and was like boom, 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 boom. It just kept going and going and going. And that's how you can forgive like real lack of development with a character, because you're more focused on what he is doing rather than how he is feeling or what he is thinking. So it was a pretty good short sort of chase down the issues and deal with them as they come kind of scenario. I think Ramon would probably call it a slice of life because there really was no target for things to engage or happen. But it didn't feel like a slice of life for me, but I could see where he would say that. My surprise, Nick Podell narrates this, and so he does a wonderful job. I pretty much have accepted that he's a masterclass narrator, but he does have some issues doing women's voices. That has been and will be my biggest complaint when it comes to his work. Otherwise, he very well manages to make the story very fun and really picks up the pace when it comes to the battle scenes. I really appreciate the way he reads the battles, the fights, the action. He just knows how to do it intuitively, and it's really good to listen to him. But yeah, I mean, I'm just not enamored with his women. Well, I mean, I don't know about his women, but they might be really hot chicks, but his women's voices just don't blow me out of the water. So the story has a ton of things going on, like an attempted capture or assassination attempt against Alan. There are also some ancient beings that offer to assist him in the game if he can prove himself. I'm sorry, the game 3. If he can prove himself. And again, awesome book. Not much in the way of characterization. Also, I will say that Alan's growth as a player may have felt a little stunted when compared to other books. And that's okay, because not every player should be OP. Although he does kind of have an OP ally with his AI that makes up for his normal limitations. So my overall score is an 8. I thought it was fast-paced, full of action, had a really good premise, but the lack of character growth really took it down a peg or two. But that did not stop me from enjoying this book from the moment it started till the time it ended. I don't think that, every book has to be deep and introspective and, empathetic towards things. Sometimes you can just have like a really great gunfight at the OK Corral moment and be like, this was the whole movie right here. But you can't just have action. And when there is no action going on, at least he has the AI or some other companions to bounce off of and help him through the process. It keeps your attention, and it doesn't slow it down in any way. So you don't have a part where you're like, I'm mired and I can't get past this point. I wish it would just end so we could get into the action again. It doesn't do that. But I would say an 8 point. Pretty much right on the nose there for that. So give it a shot. I think you'll like it if you haven't already. So here's the deal. I'm going to do a Is It Lit segment here today, and I'm going to focus on 3 books. I said before, whenever I have a series that is complete and it's out, and I can tell you about the entire series, I'm going to kind of throw all the books in like I did with the Four Lords of the Diamond just recently. I think it helps you a lot to get an overview rather than one book. And like I say, I'm not going to tell you a rating. I like these books very clearly. It'll come through that I like these books. It doesn't need a score, but I will say whether I feel it is lit RPG or not. So today I'm going to be doing the Bobiverse. We are Legion, we are Bob, for we are many, and all these worlds. Written by Dennis E. Taylor, narrated by Ray Porter, like that guy's first name a lot, with each book has a book length of around 9 hours. So the first one's 9 hours and 31 minutes.
And sound, Freud looked up and smiled. Good. You're awake. I tried to respond, but what came out was something like a cross between a cough and static. For God's sake, that sounded like a voice synthesizer having a breakdown. Freud put down the tablet, leaned forward, and rested his arms on the desk or table or whatever. Please keep trying. It can take a few attempts for the guppy interface to mesh. I considered what he'd said. It immediately brought up 3 points. Point 1, I wasn't dead. Well, okay, I think, therefore I am, yada yada. Call that one proven. Point 2, I wasn't good as new. In fact, I appeared to be speaking through a voice synthesizer, but doing so by mental control, which meant, point 3, that the technology had advanced significantly since I'd been hit by the car. How long had I been out? And what the heck was a guppy interface? I tried again, concentrating on forming the words. Someone want to fill me in on what's going on?
So I'm just going to start off by saying that no matter what the decision is on this being lit or not, this is a series that I really think you need to read. It is witty, funny, emotional, action-packed, jarring, and it's a pretty fair lens with which to view humanity. I was captivated by this series the moment I started listening to it. I literally, on Audible, it was one of the recommendations when it first came out, and I tried the little preview that you get. You know, we show those every book we do. We give you the previews that they do, and I listened to that, and I was like, wait, I don't stop. I need to find out more, and I immediately went and bought enough credits to get all 3 of the books in the series. And that was one of the great things about it. I didn't have to wait for book 1, book 2, then book 3. Everything was out. It was ready to go. And I tell you, I devoured the series. I started listening, and this is one of the first books that I thought of when I came up with the Is It Lit RPG or Not segment. So Is It Lit almost really has a lot to blame with this, because there were a couple of series that I had in mind, and one was the Four Lords of the Diamond. The Bobiverse was the other. And you'll see as we go, I really love this series. No matter what, this is a seriously cannot miss set of books that I'm equally glad that it was completed with the trilogy and completely upset that it is over. In equal measures, because I really like to have stories that have a start, a middle, and an end, and then they're done. I think the trilogy is there for a reason. There's a reason why they work. That's a reason why they've been done for hundreds of years. Well, not hundreds of years, but they've been done like that for a long time for a reason. And you can always go back and add another trilogy in. But this just works so very well. And I would love to see him come back to it at some point in the future. But for right now, Bob, it's done, and it worked the way it was. And it leaves an opening where, I mean, it's very simple. They can come back and do a million other things with this series. But it is so good that it is a trilogy, because it wraps up everything. It wraps everything up. And Bob, all of him, he's a fascinating bunch of guys. That's all I can say. Bob is just amazing as a person, or people, or a race. I don't know what you would consider him. So let's get to the story. A guy, Bob, he dies, and his brain is uploaded into a virtual world. Sounding a little familiar already, I think. But he isn't alone. Not at all. There are other test subjects with which he has to compete, because he finds out that, you know, when you die and your brain is frozen, you lose your rights. You got no rights as a corpse. so they can do whatever they want with him. And they decide they're going to upload his brain and see if he is going to be able to operate a space probe, because humanity is on the brink of extinction and they need to find, a new solar system with which to live. And that's going to sound like an old, tried and true tale that you've heard 150 times when it comes to sci-fi. And you would be right if you thought that. But the book does not just do that. There is so much more to this book series. So much more. But anyway, he's got to compete against, 5 or 6 other brain people. And if you fail, you get deleted. So, I don't think that after he undergoes a battery test, you're going to be surprised that Bob wins the grand prize and is chosen to be the probe to go into space. He has his mind loaded into a very special space vessel, and this allows him not only to explore new solar systems, but also, most importantly, replicate himself so that he can survive and do his job. I mean, if he was just flying around and they got crushed by a random asteroid or some mishap, humanity would be done. So they've given him an ability to replicate himself over and over again. Surprisingly, Bob is a little reluctant to do this. And then now, the reluctance is always there, but it doesn't stop him from doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it until there's a bunch of Bobs before the end of the first book, and there's a lot by the end of the third. So, his real problem isn't, will he survive the space debris? The real problem is that he has 3 other countries that have also launched probes similar to Bob, but they're not very friendly to the other people that have been launched out into space. In other words, they're on a mission to destroy the other probes. Now, thankfully, Bob gets a hand with an onboard assistant. A helper AI. I wonder what genre I see that in a lot. Uploaded to computer, helper AI. I don't know. It's beginning to smell a lot like Lit already. That can kind of fill him in on much needed details and plays a role that, provides the reader or listener something to feed them information. Bob is really smart, but he doesn't know everything, and the AI is there to kind of keep him from having too much downloaded into his brain. There's only so much he can be stored as, and so it's a separate thing. They can't just meld it all together and just upload everything into his brain like the Matrix. Just can't do it. So we get the helper AI. Just think of him like Jeeves, or Jarvis, or whoever you want to think of him as. But that's who he is and what he does. From there, the Bobiverse expands from being a simple humanity must survive book into numerous other themes. We literally get Bob on an alien planet helping natives, Bob colonizing other worlds, Bob falling in love with a fleshy, and all the consequences that come from that, as well as a nightmarish, unstoppable foe that Bob has no clue how to stop. I mean, this series goes in a lot of different directions all at once, and it melds everything together really nicely. It's really pretty smooth, and it's really brilliant. So throughout the course of the series, Bob grows and evolves, and you might say he levels up, actually. He really does kind of level up. Oh, level up? Let's just say he goes through numerous iterations and changes all the while, struggling to stay sane and be Bob. I cannot accurately tell you how engaging this book series is, other than to say that I listened to them one after another with only breaks for sleep or because work dictated that I put the book down for a few minutes. Ray Porter is a master, and I do mean master narrator. There is no doubt about it. You can not name a genre without him having already probably narrated something in it. It's almost impossible. If you look, the man's probably narrated 300 books by this point, and he's actually got some cred, because while I will say that this is probably his best work I've ever heard from him, I can tell you that you might want to check out his work in the Pathfinder series, based on the game, as well as his distinguished narration on WOTC's Dark Sun series from the Prison Printad. D&D had like a lot of branch games out, like El Quadam and Dark Sun. And Dark Sun was one of those, and they had a few novels that came out. He did 5 of those in addition to other stuff from D&D. So he knows games. Let's just put it that way. He's got game cred, a lot. and he knows his games backwards and upside down. He knows it so well. He also does a really decent urban fantasy series called Encrypted. And that's an IN, and then the supernatural Freudian word for monsters and undiscovered animals like Sasquatch and El Chupacabra, cryptids. So Encrypted. And it's really cool. I think you would like that series as well. But that's neither here nor there. He provides all of Bob's angst, desperation, urgency, his love, his reaction to betrayal. Sincerely, this guy is on the level of Hayes, Daniels, Podell, and Taylor when it comes to men's narration. He even does pretty good female voices. So, you could not ask for a better narrator unless you were pulling in some of the LitRPG guys. That's all I'll say. I mean, this guy he is top line quality narration. So we kind of get down to the big question. Is it lit? Is it lit? Well, part one of the criteria, he is placed into a virtual world. His mind is uploaded into a computer program, but he has control over the reality that he is in. He can muck about with his area that he's living in, backgrounds and sounds and smells, everything, even food. He plays with all of that in his little world. So he is in a game-style world if you want to be realistic about it. He also has a snarky AI to get him information. So there's that. He also improves on himself after each encounter with an enemy. I mean, when he fights somebody, he learns what they did to take him down and how to counter them. So he pretty much levels up. And then for, like Alex Rogan, he fights a desperate battle against incredible odds against an enemy that is very similar to the Codon Armada. Okay, so that last part is true, but it doesn't make it game lit just because I quote a lit movie. And yes, The Last Starfighter is game lit, and I will fight you to prove it. Anyway, while I can safely say it meets a lot of the criteria, and I so very desperately want to call this lit, I can't, because there isn't any kind of crunch to it or even soft oatmeal bites. The series comes damn close. It really does, though. And I will say that if you are a fan of LitRPG, you will absolutely love this series. Check it out. You will not be sorry. I promise you. This is one of those books that once you read it, you will think about it a lot. I have never stopped thinking about this book. It comes up all the time. I think, the Bob series did this, the Bob series did that. I compare it to a lot of things that I read or listen to even now. So, it'll pull you in. And like I say, you'll wish there were more books to the series. But you'll be very satisfied with the way the books conclude and the number of books that they have. So check it out. But it's not lit as much as I wish it was. It's not. Well, everybody, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to the show. If you want to support us, as always, I would ask you, please like the LitRPG Podcast Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just like and share the video. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed the show. Please leave comments or suggestions below, and feel free to tell me whatever you like. I really do enjoy the feedback. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Now, I did ask Ramon if it would be okay, and he said that I could let you all know that I do have a couple books on Royal Road at the moment. I would ask that you do drop over there and check them out. They are The Nightmare Game and Apocalypse on Endless Earths, Apocalypse How. The first is a straight-up horror lit RPG, and the other is a sci-fi humor-based lit RPG. So please give them a look. The second one is kind of lighter on the lit RPG. I'm going to add a lot of the elements in after I've gotten done with it. I'm not really good with numbers and stuff right off the top of my head, so I'll go back and re-add that. But the first one has a little bit more crunch, clearly, than the second, so you can see it. But right now, they're both lit RPG, and I would ask you, please, if you would, go give them a look. Remember, please leave a review for any book that you've listened to or read. Authors really depend on the reviews. So for the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast, I'm Ray, and keep listening.